your mark. Okay, it is 6 o'clock, and I will call to order the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Plainfield Township for March 21st, 2023. Our first item on the agenda is to approve our agenda. However, I'd like to make a little change and move up the approval of the consent items as well. So I'm going to kind of tie this into one. So at this time, I'd seek a motion to approve our agenda, including the consent agenda, which contains the minutes from our October 18th, 2022 meeting and our meeting dates for 2023.
So move.
Thank you, Robin. Support? Support. Thank you, Mike. All those in favor, just signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Our next item, which is number 3, is the election of officers. I've heard a couple volunteers.
I'll be secretary.
Carl is offering to be secretary. I know Robin has offered to be vice chair. Yes. We only need a chair.
Rock, scissors, paper? I'll serve as chair, sir.
Kerwin would offer to be chair. So I would seek a motion at this time then to place Kerwin as our chair, Robin as our vice chair, and Carl as our secretary. All those in favor? Oh, I need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. How about
Second.
support? Thank you, Robin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. And that part is done. So next item is public comments. I would open the floor this time for public comments. If you're going to make a public comment, you need to come to the podium. Make sure the little green light is on for the microphone. State your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. I'll time it on my, Pete, do you have the screen or am I going to use my phone? Okay, I'm on it. Mr. Holman, the floor is yours.
And Bob Holman, 5836 Woodbriar Drive, Belmont. I haven't attended very many of these ZBA meetings in the last 30 years because I really didn't have a need to. And I don't have a need to now, but I have a desire to because I have the best interests of what I think the best interests of the township at heart. The item before you in Mill Creek, along Mill Creek Avenue, in that industrial area that Pete described in his memo to you in really generous terms. I don't think I'd use those terms if I was going to be frank, but those industrial buildings along Mill Creek Avenue, abutting the floodplain and in some cases in the floodplain, were not developed in a manner that I think the township would approve in this day and age. They have water service, I think. We have buildings that don't have public road frontage. We have not well-functioning septic systems. And it's not the sort of thing that you would point to with pride, but they're there, and they've been there for decades. And so the ZBA is going to deal with the issues of the variance requests, and I'm sure you're going to do a great job of that, and I respect you for whatever you do. But I don't think you can do that in a vacuum. We have an opportunity with this now vacant lot to do things right. And generally, in the area of public infrastructure and development, doing things right usually costs more than doing them not quite right, but maybe they pass mustard at one time. But in this particular case, you've got a property that has a septic system on it that has not gotten much good review from the public health department. They've had issues, and Mr. Dennis Cole is here. He was with the township engineer at the time when he and I looked very carefully at that whole area in terms of a way of providing public sewer. And we came up with a pretty good plan. It was about as efficient as you can get in terms of putting things together in a community way rather than one at a time. But it cost a lot of money and there was no evident support. Now, I don't know if this area is in the DDA district. It is in the DDA district. So there may be some possibilities of looking at this larger issue like the DDA did when they put this boat version of Carvana up there on the West River Drive exit of the freeway. But that turned out pretty neat. Who would have thought that, right? Well, here's an opportunity to maybe do or think about doing the right thing, and it may not be this body that does it. It might be the Planning Commission, probably. But doing any development on this vacant lot without public sewer, I think, would be not taking the long view of, because it's going to be there for at least another 50 years unless there's a fire. So I think the township, in whatever capacity deals with it, should see public sewer as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else?
Dennis Cole, 5901 Coit. Just to reiterate what Bob Homan said as well, when I was working at Prine and Newhoff, township engineer, we were faced with the situation of at least one or more of the properties in this area that had failing septic systems. And so we were looking at options to serve it with public sanitary sewer. The gravity sewer is close by. It's right in Mill Creek Avenue. It just happens to be too shallow to properly service these properties. But they can be served with one of two options that we looked at, either a single lift station with gravity sewer to it, and then a single force main going up to the public sewer, or they could be served with individual grinder pumps that we looked at. So as Bob indicated, neither of which is a very cheap option, and I'm sure it's a lot more expensive than it was, how many years ago, 20 years ago that we looked at this? But it's still what we feel the best option for this property. At the time, the properties were basically, they were not looking to be renewed at the time. Now we have an opportunity with this property being renewed that there should be another look at it for the whole area solution. So we would certainly recommend that, again, not if this body, but through Planning Commission and certainly the Township Board as well, that sanitary sewer be strongly considered when reviewing this proposal. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else at this time? Okay, then I will close the floor for public comments. And we will move into our agenda items here, which is a variance request for 3658 Mill Creek Avenue Northeast. Pete, you want to do a brief one here?
Yeah. So what you have before you is a request for a variance from the side and rear property lines. The building was built quite some time ago. And in regards to the side yard setback, the zoning had changed from 20 to 25 feet. In regards to the rear yard setback, I'm assuming that the building was placed incorrectly at the time of construction. Moving on from that, and just a little bit of history on this. This building burned down. It was a total loss. Recently just did a demolition permit and finalized that with the Cascade Township, which does our building permit review. Now they're in the process. They've gone to Planning Commission in February and got site plan approval, subject to the Zoning Board of Appeals approving or denying this request. Staff was comfortable with that approach at the time because if you were to deny this request, staff could still administratively approve a relocation of the building because it's only moving a couple feet because they don't have a lot of space there to move with. In regard to Bob's comments and the sanitary sewer thing, when it went to the Planning Commission, we did not have in the ordinance that sanitary sewer connection was mandatory for industrial property. We didn't pass that until January or so of this year. It's now effective, but they kind of beat the buzzer in that regard. That said, we were in conversation with the health department, and I'm assuming Justin will maybe talk to this too. The health department emailed me today and let me know that the septic system has been ordered to be removed. That doesn't necessarily mean they can't replace it, but our position as staff-wise is that they have to connect the sanitary sewer from here on out. Now, I still have to talk to our township engineer and verify the validity of that, but that's our position at the moment. That's all I have. Any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Pete. The applicant's here to, Justin, I assume? Okay.
Evening, Justin Longstreth with Moore and Brugink Engineers representing the applicant today. I think Pete did a really good job of just giving a brief overview of the project. We've got a industrial building that burnt down last summer, and owner wants to rebuild effectively in the same location as the old building. Most all of the structure obviously was a total loss. The exception to that is the footings that are in the ground. Those are still structurally sound. And so the nature of our request today is to request the variance to continue what was effectively a non-conforming, legal non-conforming, at least on 1 yard, location for this building so that we can properly or continue to use the existing foundations that are in place. As far as the septic system is concerned, we did meet with the Kent County Health Department on site. They effectively echoed what Peter said in that the existing drain field was going to have to come out. And in talking with the applicant, I think our best solution at this point is to install some manner of grinder system to pump the waste out to the existing public sanitary sewer system out in Mill Creek. So we're exploring the design of that and where that can be located, and we'll certainly be working with the township engineer to work through those details. But it became pretty evident in the conversation with the health department that there really wasn't a path forward for rebuilding the septic system on this site. One of the other things that they've been going through, they being the tenant, the old tenant and the property owner, is a remediation plan for some soil contamination that's on site. From what I have been told, that's primarily located between our building line and the highway right-of-way. And so, again, maybe another good reason why we keep the building where it was before so that we can work with the state of Michigan to continue to work through that remediation plan and work through that and keep those soils in place until we have a good plan on that side of the building. So that's effectively it. We've got an owner that's looking forward to build. Like Pete said, we did go through and get site plan approval from Planning Commission, contingent on a couple of items, obviously, but we feel like we have a good plan to address some of those items. But if there's any questions that the board has, gladly answer those.
Okay, thank you. If you want to just grab a seat, I don't think anybody's going to do it. I need to do a public hearing at this time for this issue. Bob and Dennis, I know you already spoke. I don't expect you to get back up and repeat yourself unless you absolutely want to. Otherwise, I would open the floor for public comment on the issue, and then we'll move into board discussion or no? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close the floor for the public hearing, and we will move on to our part of this discussion. So, Justin, we may have you jump up if in case somebody has a question for you. Okay. Carl, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start off. I just have some questions. From the narrative that we got, the building that was originally there, that owner is not going to rebuild that same type of building, correct?
I think the new building structure that is going to be there is more of a pole barn structure. I'm not quite sure what the structure was that had burnt down.
I guess my question is, I think it was called Futures, or Future something. Are they gonna be the residents of this new building?
So at this time, we don't have a tenant lined up for the building. So I do not believe that the tenant that was in the building last summer is going to be the tenant at this time. We
Okay.
don't have that signed up right now.
Carl, they have told me that that tenant will not be back.
Okay. My other question is, just from a practical standpoint of view, I'm glad to see a building going back into this site of some nature. Keeping the old foundation and building on that is a financially proper method. And I guess, Peter, it's not something for us to address, but I strongly recommend that the Planning Commission get involved with the septic system. That is a priority in my mind. and the pollution that was created by the fire is secondary or is second on my list of things to take care of. But I think in general, I'm glad to see a new building going back into this facility instead of just leaving it as an empty lot. If we can take care of the sanitary sewer, I think that serves everybody's needs. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Robin?
Just in the grinder pump solution, how does that terminate to the sewage system?
Those are the details that we would need to work out with the township engineer, whether or not that would need to tie into either an existing manhole structure, a proposed structure that we install on the line. Those are the details that we need to work through. I don't have the answer for you tonight, other than to say we will work through with township and staff on that.
Thank you, but you're drifting towards a grinder solution rather than a lift station solution?
It's effectively the same thing, just the terminology is a little bit different. Without knowing exactly who the end user or users plural is going to be in this building, it's difficult to say how much water they're going to use or need. And that might be the difference in what system. I mean, think of a grinder pump, that's kind of more of like a residential term that you would have in a residential basement, not a lot of flow associated with that type of system, as opposed to a lift station, which you think of like more of a municipal system that has higher capacity. I just think based on the size of the building and the number of fixtures that they're proposing, I just don't think there's gonna be a lot of water usage that comes out of this building, which is why I use the term grinder pump.
I did a site visit today, and there's a lot of water sitting in the drainage area next to the highway. Not least of which, there's the pits where you back the truck into for the loading docks. Those are completely filled with water. In my review of the drawings, there's no drainage coming from the bottom of those pits. What's the intent? It can't be to keep the water there, but what's the intent for that?
No, and so that was an interesting thing as part of the existing plan. There just was no drainage in the bottom of those wells. And so I think the well that's closest to the expressway, I think with some simple grading, we can resolve that. The plan that's on the screen now, you see there's a fair bit of pavement that is coming out adjacent to the building. I think as part of that removal and replacement, there's an opportunity for us to put a drain in the bottom of the well that's furthest away and pipe that to the east. I think you're absolutely right. They're not gonna wanna have this brand new building and then every time it rains have 3 feet of water sitting in the truck dock. So we need to address that as well.
So that would be treated as stormwater drainage then?
Correct. Yes.
As we discussed this in the planning commission meeting, we did not have any problems with the setbacks and thought that reuse of the foundation was the right thing to do. My tour of that area, I was pretty confused to get back there the first time. But I do love the idea that you know, there is such a demand for commercial industrial space, especially in Plainfield Township, that I really like the idea that this space can be reused and repurposed and, you know, generate revenue for somebody again. So we didn't have a problem with that. But moving forward, we did make sure that the septic system, in our words, at that point, was to be looked at. But having looked at the site today, I can see, as an architect, I can see no way that a septic system could be used there. It's going to be completely saturated. So I appreciate that conversation, and I would like to see that as part of the requirement for the use of this, if it's approved by the ZBA.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Kerwin?
I'm a bit more pragmatic. I look at this with the 5 findings of fact that we're tasked with evaluating and interpreting. And the unique features on the site prohibiting the use of a redevelopment as a industrial building, meeting the ordinance, I see nothing. It's gonna be a smaller building, but it's not going to change the use. Is this self-created? The need for a variance would be self-created because we're perpetuating something that necessarily doesn't need to be there. Unnecessarily burdensome, I don't see that. We've got the ordinance, while the setback, rear yard setback changed from 20 feet to 25, it's what all of the neighbors would be compelled to deal with. Substantial justice, it's a building that's burned down, that's, life isn't fair, but another one can be built there that conforms with the ordinance. And that this creation of an ordinance amendment to solve the situation, I think if we grant a variance for this, for these setbacks, we're gonna see this occurring on all of the lots within this organization, or in this area. So while repurposing the foundation is a great thing to do, my mission is not to save your customer money. Mine is to comply and interpret the ordinances that we have and look for a solution to the practical difficulties that the site may have. I don't see those here. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Kerwin. Mike?
Most of my questions coming in were related to the septic system, which we've pretty much addressed already. Just one small comment, that the gutter that was a condition or proposed to be added along the backside, is that just intended to, weren't getting any flow out of that ditch?
Yeah, so after the planning commission meeting, actually quite recently, I think it was as recent as last week, we were in contact with the property owners to the north of us who had some concerns with stormwater runoff coming from our site, flowing north across the property line and into an existing drainage ditch that they have on their property line. I met on site with them, and we have since revised our plans. I know it's not reflected on what's on the screen, but we are proposing a drainage swale and a gutter system to capture not only the northern half of the roof water, but also the green space between the north wall of the building and the property line, and rerouting that east as opposed to allowing that to continue to flow north onto their property. So we have worked with that property owner to address that concern.
Okay, thanks, Mike. From my perspective, we have an opportunity here to kind of take a new bite of the apple. Sorry, the building burned down. But I know there might be some financial burden, but we have an opportunity now to correct what maybe was done improperly in 1983 without pointing fingers at anybody. I don't know who was responsible for that. And if you're gonna build a pole barn type building, help me understand how important these footings are in the ground, that you just couldn't put new footings in.
So I'm not the structural engineer, but my guess is that the new poles would somehow affix to the existing foundations. I don't have the details for that. Unfortunately, I'm just the site guy, but that's what I was told, is that they would reuse those existing foundations and not place new.
Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna reiterate. I think this is an opportunity for us to make a property conform that doesn't conform. I understand how we got there. The septic thing to me is a no-brainer. I don't know how any septic system could work there. And I'll just tell you, I know Tommy's had an awful lot of, it was very challenging for them to get their sewer hookup accomplished. So that's not a fun area, correct, Pete? So from my perspective, I would just as soon see us bring this baby up to current standards. I don't have any questions past some of these guys kind of covered a lot of the other stuff. So, any further discussion?
We have two variances that are sought here. Do you need one motion or separate motions for these, Peter?
They need to be dealt with separately? Yes, yes, they need to be dealt with separately, so we would have to have a motion for the side yard, which is the 6-foot variance. So I would seek that at this time, if there's no more discussion.
I'll move to deny a 6-foot variance from the minimum 25-foot required side yard setback per section 22.06C of the Plainfield Charter Township zoning ordinance for 3658 Mill Creek Avenue, based on the following 4 findings of fact. The subject site does not have unique and substandard features or characteristics. The conditions of the site and the development circumstances are self-created. The owner, reasonable use of the property for a permitted purpose, and the nature of the request makes a text amendment undesirable.
Thank you, Kerwin. Support? Thank you, Carl. So I'm kind of hearing that maybe a roll call vote is in order, so we know where we are. Correct, Peter?
That is
Mike?
correct.
Okay. Mike? Okay, so that would be a no, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Kerwin?
Aye.
Thank you. Robin?
Aye.
Thank you. Carl? As in no? As in no. Okay, and I would be a yes. So we need to deal with, so that passes, correct, if I'm?
Yeah, the way I got it was a 3-2 vote.
Yes,
Okay.
agreed. So that motion to deny has been approved. Our next issue would be the rear yard, which is the 2-foot variance.
I'll move to deny a 2-foot variance from the minimum 25-foot required rear yard setback for section 22.06D of the Plainfield Township zoning ordinance for 3658 Mill Creek Avenue, based on the following 4 findings of fact. The subject site does not have unique or substandard features or characteristics. The conditions of the site and the development circumstances are self-created. The owner, reasonable use of the property for a permitted purpose, and the nature of the request makes a text amendment undesirable.
Thank you, Kerwin. Support?
Support.
Thank you, Robin. I'm assuming we're going to do roll call vote again, but Mike?
Nay.
No, a no.
No.
Okay. Kerwin?
Aye.
Thank you. Robin?
Aye.
Thank you. Carl? No. Carl's a no, and I would be a yes. So again, 3-2, so that motion is also, or that is also denied. Okay, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is a variance request for 3701 West River Avenue Northeast. And we'll do the public hearing for that as well. But first, Pete, you want to introduce this?
Yes, the property owner, Tom Becker, approached us earlier this, well, probably February, to put an addition on the back of the house for a garage and breezeway. We reviewed the permit and noticed that he can't meet setback based on where he was laying the structures out. Historically, and it did not put this in the report, a portion of Tom's property was in Alpine Township, and then we did a agreement with them several, 2 or 3 years ago. So there's a little sliver of the property now that's on his property, and
Welcome to Plainfield Township.
so he has one consolidated legal description. We're still working on a couple other ones because there's tax things going on in that, but Tom has gotten his stuff, his business taken care of. And so now he's before you for this addition, connected by a breezeway. We have granted a couple of these in the past. We did one off of Stoll at the end of the street, similar to this. They did grant that variance back in the day, in part because Dana Street, as is labeled now, was considered an alleyway and somewhat unique, and that was the approach taken in the past for some of the other ones. I think I said in the report when I first started working here, it was actually labeled Alley Street for whatever particular reason, but, and then the road commission must have changed at some point. So that's the nuts and bolts on it. There is a fairly steep drop off as you get towards West River. It doesn't necessarily prohibit completely building on the lot and stuff. You still have some area to the north. But given the building was built in 1910 and the structural layout of some of these types of structures, I can see why he needs to come off of it to go towards the back. And in terms of general, why would we not want to make a change in the ordinance or anything like, there's only a couple places in the township where we have alleys, and most of those are just paper alleys that really have never been developed, so. I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Tom, did you want to address us? Better use the microphone then. You're talking.
Pete told me that, I've never been to one of these before, so Pete told me to step up and, like I said, we want to stay, we're getting older. The breezeway will add a main floor laundry, and like a mudroom entrance. And for the architecture of the house, it's a beautiful home built in the early 1900s. To just attach the garage to the house would really make it look awful. Where all I'm putting is a 10-foot breezeway in between the house and the garage. I'm 22 feet, whoop, I'm sorry.
Just, Pete, can you put Mr. Becker's, that's okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I'm 22 feet off the alley, and like Peter said, I kind of waited because they said the first of this year, all that rigmarole of the Alpine Plainfield Township line would be corrected. I mean, the address was 3680 Wilmington, and I first approached here 2-3 years ago, and they're like, you don't have to talk to us, you gotta talk to Alpine Township. And I'm like, what? And so that's how it all started. And then we're like, let's just wait till the township lines get changed, you know, just to try to make this correct. And, well, now I've, you know, like I said, if I would've went to Alpine Township, I was 200 and some feet off Wilmington, which it has a 3680 Wilmington address. So all I want to do is build a garage. I mean, that's it, with a breezeway, so I can have a main floor laundry, so we can be on one floor. And I grew up at 3720 Wilmington. I've been in that neighborhood almost my whole life, so I don't plan on moving, so
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
I need to open the floor or conduct a public hearing, so if anybody would like to speak to this issue, now's your time. All right, seeing no one, I'll close the floor for the public hearing, and we will move on to our discussion. How about if we go the other way this time? Mike?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Kerwin?
My 2 cents is, this is a practical difficulty. This is why this board exists. You have 2 front yards, and that's why you don't meet the ordinance. So we evaluate the findings of fact and act accordingly. I feel that your proposal was well within feasibility.
All right, thanks, Kerwin. Robin?
I totally agree with what Kerwin said. Totally agree with what Kerwin said. This is a 2 front yard situation, and this is covered. So.
All right, thank you. Carl?
Peter,
Yes, sir.
how do we determine which is front yard and which is rear yard?
Street address in this particular case.
What's that?
Street address in this particular case.
The street address is West River, so that's considered the front yard then?
Yep.
Okay. I guess I have 2 quick questions. I think you answered one of them. You want the breezeway so you can have laundry and a mudroom. And it's a 10-foot breezeway, you said?
It will sit on the existing pad that is actually, there's a 10-foot by 24-foot existing pad that the breezeway will be built on, but it'll be built. The support will be off the house wall and the garage wall.
Well, I guess part of my thought process is even if we tell him to take the breezeway out, he still needs a variance because it doesn't fit. So it doesn't make a difference if the variance is 18 feet or 28 feet, he's still off. The other question I have, and Peter, can you pull up this picture? there's a structure in what I call the northwest corner, right next to the, what is that?
Portable shed. The one right and the north.
I assume you're, I thought we could draw on there, Pete. Can we?
Well, I guess my comment is, the way you have your driveway set up coming into the garage, in my mind, it would be possible to put the garage next to or where that shed sits and meet the ordinance. Now, it's not detached, it's not attached to the house, it's sort of sitting off there by itself, but it could be done. But is that a better solution? That's what being asked? I guess that's a 50-50 call. But I'm in agreement with Kerwin and Robin that that's why this board exists, is to grant things like this to people so they can remain in their residence. So that's my questions.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Yeah, it's been said. Thank you for improving your home in our lovely township. All right. There you go. Okay, so at this time, I would ask a motion on this issue, unless there's further discussion.
I'll move to grant an 18-foot variance from the minimum 40-foot required rear yard setback per section 8.05C of the Plainfield Charter Township zoning ordinance for 3701 West River Drive in order to construct a 24-foot by 26-foot attached garage and breezeway based on the following 5 findings of fact. 1, the subject site has unique and substandard topographical and street access features not typical for a residential property. 2, the conditions of the site and development circumstances are not self-created. 3, granting the variance allows the owner reasonable use of the property for a permitted purpose. 4, the variance is consistent with development in the area, would provide substantial justice to the property owner. And 5, the nature of the request makes a text amendment undesirable.
Thank you, Mike. Support?
Support.
Thank you, Robin. I'm going to read the tea leaves and say we don't need to do roll call here. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, Mr. Becker, congratulations. Build your garage and breezeway. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Pete, the microphone is all yours. It's staff comment time.
Real
But
quick,
before you start, when does Elizabeth come back?
not soon enough. Not soon enough, actually.
Just
May 1st. May 1st. She might, there's some daycare challenges, so we might have to adjust a little bit, but May 1st is the planned date.
You're not available?
No.
Oh, okay,
My days of that doing that are done.
All right, it's all yours. Thank you.
Real quick, just want, since Kerwin and Carl had worked so much on this Plainfield gravel and sand pit, still bouncing around, goes to the board on April 10th. Maybe a final decision, maybe not at that meeting, but it's moving along. So just want to give you a heads up, and that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. We will do the board comments. Mike's good. Kerwin?
Nothing for me.
Kerwin's good. Robin?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Thank you. Carl?
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, I'll just take a brief moment and thank you guys for, Kerwin, Carl, for jumping on board. Mike, you've already been here. And Robin, our new member as well. It's difficult sometimes to find people who are willing to spend the time to help us, and you guys know, especially Kerwin and Carl, who I've served with before, that means an awful lot to me, and I'm sure it means an awful lot to the rest of the township. So thank you. Thank you for participating. And with that, we are adjourned.